What's up again, everybody? There's been a lot of talk lately on Twitter and Facebook. There's just a lot of different community spaces about where the game is at, where the game is going, and some changes or some issues that have arisen throughout the year that we've just experienced. And really, I would just sort of peg it to the past 8 months that Lexi has sort of been dominant and then rotating out of the format as she is in a few days. And so I wanted to chime in with some thoughts that I'd had, because I've seen a lot of people talking about whether or not the game is something that should be more powerful. They should print more powerful cards from the side of LSS to try and push that power level back up to where it was in the Starvo and the Chain days. Or if it should be throttled back, which is 100% what LSS is doing right now. They've said it themselves that they are throttling back the power level of the cards in the game and just the overall power of many of the heroes in the game, or whether or not they from a design perspective should more embrace and target casual players, or if they should increase variance to help casual players feel as though they don't necessarily just always lose, so that they feel like they can come to an armory and play against top level players that are all around the world and still feel as though they have a shot to actually do something rather than just lose out. But then there's other people that say, okay, well, if you do that, if you start increasing the variance, then how does Flesh and Blood's unique kind of target and niche within the game sphere of being very exacting, being very rewarding to player skill with a very high skill ceiling, how does that still become Flesh and Blood? Is it still the same thing? Is Flesh and Blood diluted to the certain point where it's no longer the game that everyone, fell in love with? And it's a lot of difficult questions to ask, and there's a huge balancing act that has to be done to try and meet the needs of, casual players, higher level players, new players, power level across the board. And I think it's easy to just say, well, here's the solution. But I don't think that that's possible to really say with any amount of confidence that will just this is the one thing that you do this and it covers all your bases and the game is good going forward. I don't think that that's too possible in this scenario. So here's your solution. The one thing that if you do this next year, LSS will 100%... No, I can't say that. I can't do it. That would be such a bad hook. I've been thinking about this ever since the kind of conversation began, and I think there's certainly one thing that could be done that has been done technically already that works really well hand in hand with this throttling down of power level. So to explain this, let me show you what I mean by putting this on the screen. Ready, set, on the screen, go. Activate, ready, go. No, this is not the one. This is the one. Go. So let's talk about the supplemental sets that we've seen in the past couple of years. So a few years ago, we got Everfest. I think this was last year. Technically, let's click a card. And what does it say? 2021. Okay, so it was 2 years ago. God, time flies when you're having fun with Flesh and Blood. 2 years ago, we got Everfest. Everfest was a supplemental set that provided cards for every class at the time. So as we go through, you can see Brute got some cards. Wild Ride is just a card that gets played straight up. But the rest of this, and Swing Big, straight up a card that just gets played straight up. But the rest of this was sort of like a KO package, if you will, including but not limited to Skull Crushers, which does see some amount of play. Starvo came out in this set, and well, we all know about Starvo, so we're not going to talk too much about him. But Guardian also got like a Pulverize. They got Imposing Visage, which sometimes sees play as just a card that can go search you some things up. Thunderquake is a nice blue that goes in the deck. Macho Grande is a nice blue that goes in the deck. So they just got kind of role filler cards. Steadfast was a card that came on strong in Blitz because it was a card that could be run by Oldhim to fatigue out your Kano opponents. But outside of that, it was basically just a good cards sort of package. Interestingly enough, the same sort of thing happened with Ninja in this set, in that they kind of just gave you like good cards. 100 Wins is a cool card, but they also gave you like the pump up for Benji, and a lot of these are sort of Benji feeders like Ride the Tailwind, Twin Twisters. And then you got Wax On, which was sort of just an innocuous card that more recently got a little bit of a buff up. But again, it's sort of just a good card set that kind of gets padded out with, a finisher combo line for Rushing River or Flood of Force, which was traditionally terrible and is still terrible to this day. Warrior class kind of got the same sort of glow up for Kasai because my spoiler card turns out quite good. Along with In the Swing, quite good. Blade Runner, quite good. Slice and Dice, quite good. Literally, Outland Skirmish, it still sees play in Kasai. All of this is just like throw all these cards in Kasai because they're all incredible, except Shatter, which is just a funny card because it doesn't right now see play. But again, good cards, just throw them in. Not doing anything out of the ordinary necessarily, just kind of giving you really powerful cards. T-Bone, same thing, really powerful card. Teklo Pounder, incredibly powerful card. You go down to Ranger, and Ranger got some card called Rain Razors, which now we know is just quite good. They also got Read the Glide Path, which has turned out to be quite good in a lot of decks. This is good in literally every Ranger, which is kind of a staple. Nevertheless, what we're seeing as we go through here, we're seeing good cards. We're seeing good cards. We're seeing good cards. Obviously, we got Aether Wildfire. This is literally what makes Wizard go. Illusionist got great cards. Very powerful auras. Got a solid card there, and then that's about it. But this is what Everfest did. Everfest is very much of the impression that we're just going to use a supplemental set to give all the classes some amount of good cards. And I say some amount because that amount could end up being just like 2. Like, for example, Brute got Swing Big and Red Wild Ride. So they got 2 cards. And then some classes, like Runeblade, got a billion. If we go down here, because Runeblade got Shrill, which does get played, got Runeblade Incantation, which does get played, got Swarming Gloomveil, Revel, and Runeblood, and then Runic Reclamation, which gets played in the sideboard a lot, and Vexing Quillhand. They got fed. So that's one way that you could build a supplemental set. But here, and I would posit that this is the point that I'm trying to make, if we compare that to a supplemental set from this year, we'll see something that I feel would be very beneficial for a lot of different players going forward. And this is something that I heard recently sort of asked for as sort of a side conversation on the Arsenal Pass podcast from yesterday. So if we go to Dynasty and we look at what Dynasty provides us as we go, again, we get some things that are just like, okay, well, this is a good card. This is a good play, like role filler card. Berserk is interesting. That kind of leads us into building the deck a little bit different. Rock. Rock is very interesting. It's a weapon that requires us to fundamentally change how the deck plays, how the deck is constructed. Interesting, okay? We have some tools to do that with some of these other cards, but outside of that, that's kind of what they gave us. Then you look at Guardian, and Guardian feels a lot like just good cards. Like we get good cards here, and then not necessarily that many other good cards. You could say Steelbraid Buckler is actually fantastic right now, but overall we kind of just get some good cards, if you can even call it that, for a hero or a class that didn't really need much at the time. But this is what I brought you here for, everyone. What did they give to Ninja? They gave Ninja an entire new archetype in Tiger Ninja. They gave you Tiger support cards. They gave you Tiger payoff cards in the form of +1s. They gave you Tiger synergies. They gave you Tiger generation. They gave you a Tiger aura that no one plays. They gave you a Tiger, just like a good pop-off card that could be played in Blitz. They gave you an entire package of cards that can allow players of any skill level an opportunity to express themselves in a different way via a different archetype in a hero or a class that they've played before. And this is what I want to talk about, because this is the first time in a long time that I think Flesh and Blood dove headfirst into expanding archetypes. And it wasn't just the ninja class. If we go all the way to the bottom, they printed a card that allows anyone to become a different talent, a royal. And that opens you up to a few cards. Doesn't open you up to a lot of cards, but it opens you up to a few cards. But that's a signpost moment where they say, okay, if we can give you a card that opens you up to a new set of cards, then you as the player can say, okay, what does it mean to be a royal wizard? What does it mean to be a royal ranger? What does it mean to be a royal whatever? There's an opportunity there as a designer to give you a card like this and then to, print a bunch of cards that pay you off for that and allow you to play into a different archetype. The same thing is true with Illusionist, and I don't think Illusionist really particularly got a lot of great things from Dynasty outside of maybe Soraya and Blitz. Wave of Reality is very, very good, but then they got a lot of payoffs for Ward, or a lot of cards with Ward, so almost like a new archetype here. So you could try building a Ward archetype. Now, whether or not this is good is the next question, and that is where you're probably screaming at me through the monitor. Like, yes, technically Wizard did get all of these Surge cards. Yes, Surge is a new keyword you could try to build into Surge, but DM Armada, it sucks, and I will tell you right now, yes, it does. I know, I built the deck. It's not something that you can necessarily play into. You just still have to build sort of a good card thing. But they gave you Brainstorm, and that's something you can build in a completely different archetype. Is it good? Well, that's the question, and the answer is generally not, but you have something new to build into. But here's my point with a card like this, and really a package like the Ninja package, as we go back up there. The Ninja package points you into a brand new direction in the Crouching Tiger line, or archetype. Flesh and Blood would benefit greatly next year by expanding the archetypes that heroes can play into. Why does this make sense now? Well, the fundamental flaw with doing this is that if it's not even remotely close to being as powerful as what's out there right now, then you're just playing worse Flesh and Blood. Period. End of story. You're just playing worse Flesh and Blood by playing something that doesn't function at the same axis of power as something else, right? Would we all agree on that? I would believe we would. But if they are rattling down the power level of the game right now, it means that they have the capacity to then print archetypes and card packages that could be, if this is the power level that it's been brought down to of the game. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like this is, including variants. We just brought power level of cards down, action point economy down. Then they could print an archetype that sits here, and no longer does it feel like, well, the power level's here and this archetype's down here. There's so much of a gap there that we just lose every time with our, fun little pet deck. That gap is closing by taking the ceiling down, and it allows LSS to perhaps come in and print new archetypes, print new things and ways to build old heroes that turn them on their head. And what else does this do? But it introduces variance, and it's not the variance that you would expect. It's not variance like, okay, it's variance in I build my deck and like there's variance built into what I draw, or when I play a card, I have to roll a dice. It's not that variance. And it's not variance into like, okay, I get high rolled by my opponent. Now it's variance into I could sit down against a Katsu and I could play this version of Katsu, or that version of Katsu, or that version of Katsu. It could be any version. And the variance therein lies in trying to figure out what you're playing against. And yeah, that you may not consider that variance at home, but I very much do. Because expanding the possibilities increases the likelihood that you're going to see something new. And new players can look at that and go, wow, I want to build this version of the deck, and then this version of the deck, and then this version of the deck of my favorite hero. Why? Because I think it would be cool. Because I think it would be fun to be able to sit down at an armory and feel as though I can actually play Brainstorm Kano because maybe it got a few more tools, or maybe it feels a little bit better into a lower power level hero pool and metagame. It would be very cool if I could sit down and someone sees Kano and they're like, oh, this is combo Kano. And I'm like, well, technically it is, but not necessarily in the way you would think, because Kano only functions, sadly, on combo, alas. But it would be cool for new players, casual players, to be able to do this. And yes, Fundamentally, I think this game is based on the best sort of like math is the best deck. But if all of those power levels start to ratchet down, then there's more sideways space. Theoretically, there's more sideways space to explore the math of the game. Whereas if the power level is just way up here, I'm just going to always use Crown of Seeds. I'm just always going to play 4 go-agains and then just win the game because I have too much efficiency, too much consistency, and then too much power. Something like Tiger Katsu that has a lot of more variance based on what you draw, but has a lot of really cool pop-off turns and really splashy moments, could come into the fore and, you know, make some waves if this goes down to here. So my opinion is that if LSS continues to ratchet down the power level, we could look at a set like Dynasty and say, this is the possible direction that would open up more opportunities for new players, casual players, and maybe even professional players to spread variety into the metagame. And I don't necessarily think that this is possible if the power level of the game stays high. Because if the power level of the game stays high, you have to print an archetype that's also just equally broken. Otherwise, it does nothing. And that's kind of what we saw with Dynasty in certain respects. That is kind of what some of this did. I mean, they printed like Felling Swing, and then they made everyone wait until we got more, Axe support. This set also introduced Nitro Mechanoid, which is now seeing like a possible sort of dark horse play via the new heroes that were introduced. So we're already sort of seeing some of that capability come to the fore, particularly with certain heroes starting to rotate out that are just too powerful for this stuff to live and breathe. So this is my thought going forward. I do believe that it is very possible for them to now print these new archetypes that are sort of sideways steps of like established heroes. So tell me what you think about this in a comment below. Do you think that this is a way for LSS to allow new players to explore the game and give them the avenue to try new things without necessarily feeling like they're going to get absolutely steamrolled? Or do you think that this is just one of those pie-in-the-sky pipe dreams where, yeah, it'd be fantastic if, you had all these archetypes, but if it's not the best version of that deck, why would it ever get played? I want to know your thoughts. Leave a comment down below. Let me know in a comment below. And hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully this provided you some amount of, joy or just education. Maybe you got something out of it. If you did, tell me that. Make a number go slightly higher, because if you do, a 2 appears. 2s are cool. As always, thanks for watching.